Hey, Paul.
Hey, Fab.
How's it going?
Good, you?
Good. All right. So we got a big topic today. That could go in a lot of different directions. let's see where it goes. Which is about pricing your product and services. And I know it's a very big topic. There's a lot of stuff to take into account. So let's focus a bit more on, positioning or selling the value of it, or pricing it based on value. Let's forget about all the cost calculations and all that should also go into it, like your fixed costs and your variable costs and all that stuff. This is really about like the value component of pricing. Let's put it that way.
Okay. Well, before we go there, if you don't mind, I just thought of something we should talk about, because you forget about your costs and cost variability and all that. The closer you are to a commodity, the closer you're going to have to do cost plus, right? So if you're selling screws or wood or whatever, your commodity, right?
Yeah.
Wood, lumber's gone up a lot. And if you're offering a service that is not a commodity, but that is ongoing, and it's let's say a service that's almost like a product, they could need you forever, for example, then you need to attach the value of what you're doing to the outcome of what you're trying to help. Now, that's not always easy, but that's important. And a lot of people aren't good at that.
Yeah.
So what I suggest to people is say, well, the first thing you have to calculate when you're doing anything with any client is, what is the value of what I'm going to bring to the table for these people, right? And you said it before, we had this conversation offline. Some things are not so easy to calculate, right? And some things are easier to calculate. Like for someone who's doing sales training like me, it's very easy. What are you trying to achieve? Well, this is the value of what we're trying to bring. We're going to bring you to that level.
Right.
For someone who's got a product or a service that's not as defined, then you got to ask the questions and dig deep and say, well, what does my part help enable you to do in your business? And that's super important. I think I'm a little bit like this too, and we often fall into the trap of saying, well, I charge so much an hour, which is true. Sometimes you do have to bring it back to that. But really the way you calculate that hourly rate is how you're going to bring something to fruition.
Right.
The other thing we're talking about offline is like, are you coaching and training them to an end where they won't need you anymore, which is fine, right?
Yeah.
Or are you offering them service where they will need you forever?
Yeah.
Or they'll need someone like you forever. Well, then you're setting up a business, right? Then you're setting up a business. You could even hire people and offer the service forever. Now, in what I do personally, sales training and sales coaching, usually there's an end to what I do, right? Because I'm helping people move forward, but at one point they've learned what they need to do and they need to apply it. So I'm coaching them. I'm teaching them, for all intents and purposes, on how to ride a bike. Once they know how to ride a bike, I could coach them to be better bike riders if they want to win the European race, but I'm not a permanent fixture. Right. Some people's businesses can become permanent fixtures, which is nothing wrong with that. But again, you got to set the value of what you're doing.
Right.
And then there's two ways of looking at it. If you've got a 1 year or 2 year or 3 year or 10-year contract with someone, you're going to be there for 10 years. Well, there's a certain security in that. So you might consider that in the value of what you're bringing forward.
Of course. Yeah.
And vice versa. If what you do has a tremendous effect on what you're doing, you need to calculate. Now, you need to take that into consideration if it's a short-term thing, but you're bringing a lot of value. Yeah. What we often fall into in the negotiation thing is we go towards price. And you shouldn't go towards price, right? You should establish a value. But if someone's trying to, well, I find that let's take 15% off your rate. Well, no, that's not what it's about, right? And if someone's negotiating you on rate, then you need to be comfortable to walk away if you feel that's not what you should be doing. And it's tough because a lot of people like to negotiate on rate, right? They'll say, well, face value, I always get a discount, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
But when you're buying quality, you shouldn't really be getting a discount unless it's a commodity. Again, commodities I could buy it somewhere else for cheaper, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. No, got that. And
this is beautiful in theory, but it's way harder to do in practice, right? We all fall in. We all buy cheap clothes. Everyone I know in North America, at least, takes the time to buy something that has some value because it's discounted.
Yeah.
We're trained that way, so we often try to get discounts in everything we buy. Even
And at the end of the day, you're still, yes, we buy on emotion, but we still justify with rationale, right? And so at the end of the day, like the customer still needs to understand what they're getting, right? So let's say you talk about the value and this and that, and like, for me, let's say we're going to work on your lead nurturing program, but what am I going to get at the end of the day? And that's where, like, there's a fine line, for example, between, that's where it's easy to fall into that hourly rate conversation, I guess. Because it's like, well, I'm going to give you,
and that's where you need. Whenever someone does that, you need to just back off. Say, hey, look, lead. What do these leads do for you?
Yeah.
Proper lead nurturing do for you? Well, it brings in leads, and what is the value of those leads? Well, we sell this or that, and it's worth that much. That's what you're helping them achieve.
Yeah.
And if they say, well, I feel it's worth, let's say they say, I feel it's worth paying X dollars an hour for that. And you're thinking, whoa, in your head, it was like 2X.
Mm-hmm.
Say, well, explain to me how you get to that X.
Yeah.
Well, this, that. Say, well, in my view, I'm helping you to do, 20X. I want 2X.
Right.
That's the value I put to it,
right.
And I'm not negotiating. I'm comfortable in saying this to you, and this is where I'm going with it. Right.
Right.
But then you have to be able to walk away too, right? So that's a tough thing too, right? So you got to be able to say, well, if you want to play the game, you have to be willing to walk away, or else, someone can negotiate you down to a point where you're not happy about it.
Right.
And if you're taking on customers that you're not happy to deal with just because you need the money, well then it's gonna hurt.
Yeah, and we've talked about that, right? There's a certain facility when you have a full pipeline versus when you don't, right? So if you have a full pipeline and you have a whole bunch of opportunities coming in, you don't feel the need to negotiate as much as when you have an empty pipeline and you're like, this is the only opportunity I have. But I was going to say we've gone off on a tangent, but we really haven't, because it's also part of pricing your agreement, right? Like let's step out of our, solopreneur consulting world for a minute. And you're talking about a sales team, if a salesperson is like at this is the last month of the quarter, right? We're recording this early September. If they have a completely empty pipeline and they know they're not going to achieve their quotas this month or this quarter, except for these 2 deals, I mean, they're going to do whatever it takes to get those 2 deals. And that often means discounting, right? And so you're kind of not pricing that product anymore.
Yeah, it boils down to supply and demand. If you're willing to walk away, it really boils down to that.
Yeah.
And if you are capable of asking the right questions to find out the value, let's say you've asked the right questions, right? You've done the ARQ, as our podcast is called. You've asked the right questions, and you've figured out exactly what it is that the value of what you're going to bring to the table, or an idea of the value you're going to bring to the table. You've gone down that route, right? And the client or the prospect still doesn't want to pay your price. They're trying to negotiate with you. You have to be willing to walk away. And if you're not, then you're stuck, because you don't want to take a raw deal. Right. And any client or prospect that doesn't understand your value, you're not going to be happy with.
Right.
Because they're always going to say, well, I only think you're worth, $200 an hour. I don't want to pay you $300 an hour. Well, that's something, say, well, that's not the way you have to look at it. It's a value when I bring. And it says, well, I don't believe in that. Well, then why are you dealing with it?
Yeah.
And it's a tough call. Listen, I'm preaching this. Have I always gone down that road? No, it's hard. It's always more complicated in real life. But the first thing you need to do is really ask those questions to understand the value. And when someone's negotiating with you, you got to bring it back to the value of what you're going to do for them.
Yeah.
And even if it's far down the road, like even if you're saying like lead nurturing, it's not an exact sale. No, but without lead nurturing, the reps don't get good leads and they don't nurture them properly and they don't sell as well and you're not going to do as well. So it's a very important part of that chain, right?
Yeah.
listen, if you're building Teslas and you don't have, and the metal fastener is being negotiated with harshly by the Tesla buyers.
Mm-hmm.
If they don't have the metal fasteners, they can't put the the body onto the car. Well, yeah, it's not the super duper electric engine, it's not the super duper battery, but they still need those freaking metal fasteners.
Right.
So, and who are they going to get them from? Now, if it's a pure and plain commodity, if there's 1,000 people in the world that they can offer this, but then, it's a commodity price. But let's say there's only one person who can make these fasteners and they need to be adjusted every time and you need someone to go in and do it properly. Well, then this has a specific value. Right. Or you need to walk someone through a procedure to help them do whatever it is better. An engineer that is, giving you intense consulting on how better to increase your efficiency in your manufacturing process.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that has value. Yeah, you might say, well, okay, it's far down the line like lead nurturing, but if they don't have a good manufacturing process, if they don't do it properly and they don't talk to this engineer, they're still going to sell, but they might be less efficient. Their 150 employees might only put out 100 tons a day rather than 100 and 100 or 110 tons a day, right? So and you have to look at that, and we often forget that because the client knows, and you don't talk about the value, and then you just go straight to negotiating that price, right?
Right.
I mean, I'm a guitarist. I've said this before. I walk into a store and I want to buy a guitar. I always negotiate because I know, most guitars I buy are, they make 10,000 or 20,000 of them a year, right? So, it's somewhat of a commodity. So I'm negotiating a little bit, and they know there's a lot of stores negotiating with you. Now, if it was a one-off up there, right?
Yeah,
and the guy said, I really want that guitar. He says, well, the price is, let's say a lot more than what I'm willing to pay, twice what I'm willing to pay. Well, I've got to think to myself, do I want to pay that twice? Do I walk away? Do I let someone else buy it?
Of course.
Or is it really worth it to me? That's selling value, right?
Yeah.
And to set up value, to understand what you bring, you need to ask those questions. You need to understand what you do and how you get there. Anyways, I'm rambling on.
No, but there's good in there because it's like, that's what you're saying. It's like beyond the dollars and cents, right? Your operational side of things of like managing your costs and making sure obviously you're covering your costs and all that. There's the perceived value and whether you're a salesperson, at the end of the day, and are you spending the time to understand their value, but also as an organization, you need to spend time to understand the value that your product or service brings. So you're saying like doing some sales coaching or building a nurturing program. Well, there's value for somebody for that at the end of the day. And if they don't understand the value, and if you can't get to that value, well, then your pricing is going to be subject to negotiation, right? Mm-hmm. If they're getting it because they heard that they have to be doing it, but they don't understand the value and you can't get to it for whatever reason, well, then you pretty much guarantee that whatever price you give them, they're going to negotiate, but because you can't bring that back to value.
It's exactly that, right? Or someone will just, sometimes you get lucky, they just want to pay.
Yeah.
But you know what? It's why not sell on value? Why not set the expectation to what you're helping to achieve? It makes just more sense. That's being consultative. The basis of being consultative is understanding what your client's trying to achieve.
Yeah.
It brings you closer to being part of the team.
Hmm.
Well, they all link together, right? When we talk about being consultative, right? This whole podcast of ours, whether you're doing marketing, whether you're being a salesperson, whatever you do, it's all about being consultative, right? It's all about understanding what your client's trying to do. Hmm. So every little part is important. Selling value is huge. It's and to sell value, sometimes you have to quantify, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes your client has a hard time setting that value. Well, then you have to help them quantify what is the value of what lead nurturing can bring to you? What is the value of what sales consulting can bring you? What is the value of whatever product or service, being a ski consultant brings to you? And you have to help your client quantify sometimes, to put in dollars the value of the problem. What would it be? I don't know. Well, let's look at it.
Yeah.
I'm hoping to get from lead, so you walk them through it, you get them there. And that's important. And it's all part of the process, but we forget that.
Yeah.
We and I say we, I mean, salespeople forget that, the people selling that, the people making the deal. Sometimes they get overly excited. You just said it before. I've got 2 big deals coming at the end of the month, and I know I need these 2 big deals, and if I lose one of them, I'm cooked. Well, your head's on the chopping block. Well, then you feel a little bit more precarious, and prospects and clients can smell that, and they're you give little cues that you really desperately want this, and they're just going to knock at you, right?
Yeah.
I've been playing chess lately, and it's the same thing. You do one bad move, you're cooked.
Yeah.
If the person's smart at the other side, they're tearing you apart. And I'm learning, by the way, so I'm very novice, but it's fun, and it's something you have to consider in life. Not that it's like a chess match, because it's not they die or you die, but it's something you have to consider, that when you're trying to achieve an objective, the value of what you bring to the table needs to be established, and you need to do some soul searching yourself. You said it before offline. I've been doing this for 30 years. I put a lot of time into it. So every time someone talks to you, they're talking to your experience, right?
Mm-hmm.
Talking to what you bring forward, and that's what you're selling as an individual. Same thing for me.
Yeah.
So that's part of the value. That's how we price ourselves when selling value. If someone just calls me up and says, "How much you charge an hour?" I never answer them.
No.
Because that's not what it's about. I mean, first of all, I need to understand what you're trying to achieve, where you're trying to go, what is it you're trying to do, And if they're really insistent, I'm not even sure I want to deal with them, because what kind of person just asks that question, right?
Right.
Knowing what it is that we can possibly do together, right?
Yeah.
I want to buy a car as long as it's black. Cars, okay. Yeah, you don't care about the engine, the wheels, the size. I just want it to be black. Okay, well.
Cool. All right, let's try to. So if I can summarize it, I think
it's a tough one.
I
like to summarize. I hope I can't wait.
I don't know if there's a way to summarize it other than to say that you can't underestimate, and as a seller, but also as an organization, to really understand the value that you bring, right? Because it's just easy to do kind of a cost plus thing. Like they say, like, well, I have 20 years experience, so I'm going to charge $175 an hour or $200 an hour for, whatever it is. It's easy to do that. What's harder is understanding really the value and the value. There's something that you said that I liked, which was like, the buyer might know and the seller might know, but if it's not like out on the table, right? If the cards are not out of the table, like this is what we're working towards. This is going to help you achieve. Then it's always up to interpretation.
Well,
right?
I want to say one last thing, okay? And this is, your wife could probably talk to us because she's a psychologist, but you compartmentalize stuff, right? So, if I ask you, what did you pay for your house? You can think about it and it's there in the background. If I say what you pay for your car, you'll think, but it's not always up there up front. What you're doing when you're selling something is you're bringing that value up front. Even though both sides might know it, you're saying, okay, this is what we're talking about here, right? This is what we're talking about. We're talking about the value. This is the value. So if this is the value, we're both trying to achieve that. And what I'm saying is, I'm going to charge you X to get your value.
Yeah.
Sorry, I jumped in.
Thanks, Paul.
Is that your kids in the background?
Yeah, everybody's back.
We're doing the podcast at a different time now, so I think Fab's children are home. I love it. Is he singing or playing?
Probably a bit of both. I don't know. I have my headphones on, so I think you heard more about it I've heard more of it than me.
I love it. It's cute.
All right, Paul. Take care. Thanks for everything. Bye, everybody.